while you're making these decisions, while you're building your business, your life, your legacy, let's talk about some challenges. What are some things that you've had to overcome to be here today? And what are some things that might have almost taken you out?
My wife and I, Jess, we were expecting our first little girl. We ran into some health complications with our daughter. We went in, had a regular routine checkup. We were there a little bit longer than we were supposed to be. That's when the question marks start going off. When we had our visit with the doctor, it was kind of crazy that the doctor came in and spoke in doctor terminology. And the next things that he told me was, look, if you don't go into an induced labor by next Friday, you're probably not going to have your daughter. And that's when a lot of things really started to get put into perspective for me. It's so crazy how life really starts to test you. A lot of the insecurities that I had, all of them came to the top.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to our YouTube channel. My name is Steve Holbrook, and I'm here with a very special friend of mine, Kenny Zanis. Kenny is one of the newest junior brokers in our agency. Kenny, we're so proud of you and Jess. How you feeling today, brother?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling really good. I'm excited to hop on the podcast with you, and hopefully we can deliver some good value to your followers and see if I can put some things together.
Yeah, I know we're going to bring some value. We always bring value on this YouTube channel. But hey, listen, man, before we get into it, and Kenny's right, we're going to bring some value. You can expect some great nuggets out of this podcast. Kenny, why don't you just tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, kind of what you did before we got into business together, how you ended up, with our team, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, so I think, it might actually be easier to say what I didn't do because I've kind of come from a little bit of everything. I've done some construction. I've worked bar and restaurant. The Greek family members, they do have restaurants, so that stereotype is absolutely true. So I've definitely worked with them and done a little bit of retail. So I've kind of done a little bit of everything. And there's obviously going to be aspects that I enjoyed, and there's going to be some things that I didn't quite enjoy about all those different industries. But yeah, kind of a little bit of everything, which was nice.
Awesome. You mentioned fitness in there. Talk a bit about that. How did being, and a lot of people that have success in our business have dabbled in the fitness industry before. I'm not saying you dabbled, but we're in it. How did that correlate going from the fitness industry to killing it in our industry?
It was a lot of fun. And, it was kind of interesting, the path that took me to get back into that industry as well too. I'd always been a big sports enthusiast growing up. I've had, a good career in basketball and football. And, there was a little stint where, I needed to find a little job, something to pay the bills. And I found myself at one of the local gyms here in Calgary. And I was actually a fitness consultant. So I was helping people get started on their fitness journey. And, to transition it back into this business, it's kind of unique to see the similarities that you have with fitness and with finance is that most people they need to take that first step. And I think for most people, the biggest challenge that they have in the fitness world, as well as also in our business, in the finance world, is that the most challenging part is just to get started. And that was a big thing that I saw when, kind of looking at both industries, is that there was a lot of people that were struggling with their fitness, but then you look at what this industry is in Canada, at least, and there's a lot of people that are struggling financially. So I, was able to transition and was able to come full time. I fired my boss, as we like to say a lot of the time. And it's been a really unique transition period, and a lot of skill sets that I had there, I actually implement here in my business now with you too, which is a lot of fun.
You brought up a good point there. And I've never heard it put this way. You talked about the most challenging part is helping people just get started. And is that so true? I mean, I'm sure anybody watching would agree that in all walks of life, all areas, just getting started is really the hardest part. So I want to walk it back for a sec. Let's get into your family in a little bit, but you come from a different industry. You come into our business. It obviously, it takes a while to get things going, but here you are on this call with myself. You passed a lot of people along the way. I mean, the road to success is paved with, casualties on the sides. How did you, we talk a lot about mindset on this YouTube channel. I talk a lot about mindset. You know me really well. I talk about mindset all the time. I train on it all the time. What were some of the things that you developed part of your mindset to go from where you were to where you are and really to rise up within that group and really separate yourself to the point where, we're having this conversation here today? What were some of those mindset keys for you?
Yeah, it's kind of funny when I got introduced to the business with you. You're absolutely right. You definitely do talk a lot about mindset and personal development, and you should be expanding your horizons. I kind of got thrown into it. I wasn't quite sure exactly what I was doing when I first got into this, but the one thing that I can definitely say about myself is I'm absolutely coachable when it comes to certain things that are being thrown my way. And I was quite quickly introduced to some personal development outside of our business, and was in a position financially where I was able to actually invest a considerable amount of money into my own personal development. But the thing that I had to remember is that it's me versus me. And along the way, it's kind of interesting that, when everybody else is giving you motivation and they're pouring belief into you, when everybody else is gone, you're still with yourself. And I noticed really quickly that the thoughts that I was having, there was a lot of doubt, there was a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of insecurities that were kind of rising to the top. But because I was able to put myself into that position where I was able to kind of work on my headspace and really just challenge myself, because that's what it's about when it comes to personal developments. I do read, I like personal development books, but I feel as though those individuals are the ones that just read books. Those are good for maintenance. But you need to get into the arena and really kind of get your hands dirty with different levels of activity, different things that can challenge you to ultimately grow that mindset along the way. Because if you're just reading it, well, there's a lot of people out there, and you've probably seen it in your tenure in this industry, that they'll read it, they'll preach it, but they won't do it when they need to be doing it. So that's definitely something that I've looked at for myself and for my wife as well. We've done a lot of personal development outside of what we do too.
When you said you invested some money, like when you started investing in yourself, and I love what you said there. When everybody else is gone, you're still with yourself, right? How many times do we get caught in a moment where we're negative self-talk, we're all by ourselves, it's dark, we take ourselves down a dark road? I really loved how you said that. You talked about investing a lot of money into personal growth. When you started investing in yourself, did you have the money? Was there lots of extra money sitting aside, or did you really have to stretch to invest? The reason I ask is because I think a lot of people are like, well, once I can afford it, and once I can afford the time and the course and the money, I'm going to go spend some time on myself and money. Maybe people watching this are thinking, well, it must be nice that you have all this money to invest, but I don't know that that's the case.
Yeah, early on, I was fortunate. I was a pretty good saver early in my younger years. But, there were times definitely along the way where you start to question, like, should I do this? Is this something that I should do? And it's kind of cool. Some of the exercises that I've done is that there's some people that are afraid of the zero. And it depends on where that zero is. So some people might be okay with $10, but they're not okay with $100. They might not be okay with $1,000. So really, how many zeros are attached after whatever the first number is will really start to push you and push the boundary to see exactly what you're capable of. So to kind of what you were asking, yeah, there was the initial amount that I did have, but I did have to stretch, and I did have to start really asking myself, of what's kind of the value that I want to get out of this, or what kind of value could I get out of this, and really starting to challenge myself. And I've talked about this before with my agency, my team, is that a lot of times we give ourselves the out when we ask ourselves a question of saying, I don't know how to do that. But if we start to shift the questions that we're asking ourselves of how could I go and accomplish this goal, or what kinds of things would I need to do in order to get X amount of dollars, you start to get a bit of a different picture that's going to get painted. So in the beginning, yes, I did have a good little nest egg, but near the back end of things, obviously things get a little tight sometimes, and that's where the stretching and that's where the real growth had to come in and take place.
So you're on this entrepreneurial journey. You're starting, and I think anybody watching who started a business understands the entrepreneurial roller coaster. There's actually a great book by Darren Hardy called The Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster. If you haven't read it, there's a plug for it. But you're on this journey, you're personally developing, cash flows up sometimes, cash flows down, good month, bad month. You're starting a family, you're building this business. A lot of people talk about kind of making a decision. They talk about kind of a moment, an event, breakthrough, a breakdown that it kind of shook them, and they were never the same on the other side. Did you ever have that moment? Do you remember a time where you made a decision, and what was that moment and process like for you?
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. Obviously, you gave me a shout and you said you'd like to do this podcast, so it kind of gave me the ability to really reflect and
Mm,
look back at the journey as a kind of a whole. And one of the things that I realized that it wasn't just one decision, but it was a multitude of decisions that made up that one decision. Because a lot of times it's, well, once I get to X, then I can start doing Y.
right.
And that wasn't really ever the case, because for some people that maybe start listening to this podcast with you as well too, maybe they're at a position where they just can't even get out of bed.
Mm,
So making that smaller decision just to get out of bed will really start to snowball them into getting to the next step too.
mm,
So yeah, I absolutely agree that there was the making a decision, the flicking of the switch per se, but there really had to be a lot of mini choices along the way that I was making where, hey, you know what? I'm huge into sports, but one thing that I realized was that me watching sports or always being involved in it, I needed to just say, hey, for a period of time, I just need to trade. And I love, instead of saying sacrifice, I would love to say trade to people, because that's just really what it is. If I could say, hey, you trade 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of your time of maybe some struggling, maybe some doubt to get the back 30, 40, 50 years, well, would you take that trade?
mm,
And I think for a lot of people, they're going to say yes every time. So there
mm,
was a lot of things that needed to happen. And I truly believe that unless somebody's level of frustration really boils over, they're
mm.
never going to make that decision or that switch for them, because they're living in comfort. And everything that you want comes from that uncomfortable zone. So that was kind of the way that it worked for me, is just a bunch of micro decisions along the way.
Yeah, it said, the anatomy for an explosion is high levels of frustration. And I agree with you. For me, my career has been a lot of the same. It's been those little decisions along the way, day in, day out, and good decisions and sometimes bad decisions, right? Slight edge curve up, slight edge curve down. And it's those little decisions that we make every day that ultimately shapes our life. So no, it's interesting. It's interesting, kind of your thought process on that. So, while you're making these decisions, and while you're having while you're building your business, your life, your legacy, let's talk about some challenges. What are some things that you've had to overcome to be here today? And what are some things that might have almost taken you out permanently, but you were able to push through? And, there's a lot of people listening right now that are probably in the middle of it. So what are some things that you can recall?
Yeah, it kind of goes even back to when I was little. My daddy decided that the family life, it unfortunately wasn't for him. He chose to go and live another life at some point. So it was just my mom and I. So really, it started even there, where I could have just chose to stay on the sidelines, continue doing what I was doing, working my 9 to 5 for the rest of my life. But there was a lot going on behind the scenes, and obviously, you and I had a conversation a few months ago. And just as things started to ramp up, that was really when life started to show up for me as well.
Mm,
And I've been a firm believer, and I've said this to a lot of people, is that life will always show up right when you're about to level up at the same time.
mm,
And so as we were kind of really fighting for this milestone in our business, my wife and I, Jess, we were expecting our first little girl. And I think I shared with you a little bit we ran into some health complications with our daughter,
yeah.
where, we went in, had a regular routine checkup. We were there a little bit longer than we were supposed to be. That's when the question marks start going off. And, when we had our visit with the doctor, it was kind of crazy that the doctor came in and, spoke in doctor terminology. And then me being me, I just asked, hey man, can you dumb this down a little bit for me? I'm not really grasping what you're saying. The
Yeah.
next things that he told me was, look, if you don't give birth, if you don't go into an induced labor by next Friday, you're probably not going to have your daughter.
Mm,
And that's when a lot of things really started to get put into perspective for me. And it was, holy crap, like, I really got to get this thing going. And, right around the time that we had our annual convention up in Edmonton, that was probably the lowest I had been.
wow. So you're rolling into this event, everybody's fired up, everybody's ready to go, everybody's excited to be there, and you're rolling into this event where you just said potentially the lowest point you've ever been.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And, I was very fortunate that you and the leadership crew of our office here in Calgary, you decided that I'd be the one opening up that whole entire convention with about, I don't know, 700 people, all live and in person, which was remarkable. I had a ton of
You
fun.
crushed it, by the way. You crushed it.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I was fighting my own personal battle, and none of my team, none of them knew. You knew, my senior partner Mike, he also knew as well too. And I had one foot out the door.
Mm.
I was ready to start calling it quit and go, what am I doing here? I had set some goals that I wanted to roll into that convention, really just excited and fired up and already accomplished that goal, but that wasn't the case. And, I had to compartmentalize it. I really had to just go out and say, okay, I know I'm going through stuff right now that can wait. I really just got to go out, do exactly what I need to do to get the job done. And then I'll start dealing with it afterwards.
Mm.
And fast forward another, 30 days, again, had a ton of momentum. But even though I had a ton of momentum, I thought I couldn't get any lower. I got even lower.
So just when you thought you're rock bottom,
Yeah.
you had another level you needed to go down.
Yeah, man. Life really, really showed up. And, like I mentioned, with it just being my mom and I, outside of my wife and my daughter, she's arguably one of my best friends. So I was actually out on a walk with my daughter. I had her in the stroller and I was just looking at her. And I just remember just thinking to myself, what the heck am I doing?
Mm.
I had a ton of money. I was saving good money. But like you said, that entrepreneurial roller coaster, the bank account started getting real thin.
Mm.
And so I called my mom up and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I had all this money. Now I've got nothing. I have a daughter here that I'm looking at right now, and she's obviously got a couple of little health complications that we're working through right now too. Am I going to be a good father? Am I going to be a providing and supporting and loving husband? I think for guys, we have this tremendous pressure that's put on our shoulders all the time that we need to be this top performer, this top achiever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so crazy how life really starts to test you. And I think I referenced it before that a lot of the insecurities that I had and have, let's call it what it is. No person on this planet will ever go through life without any insecurities.
So,
All of them came to the top. All of them, yeah, all at the same time, and they were put on blast. And I had to acknowledge a lot of things. And it was really crazy how after that phone call, after my little pity party that I had with myself, 4 days later, I'm signing my contract as we crossed over that milestone. So I think a lot of people, Steve, they get to that point where it's make or break it, and then they turn around not realizing that all the stuff that they had to get through to get to that point, they now have to go back through to go back to what they were used to, what they were comfortable with. So yeah, there was some ups and downs, man, for sure.
That's so crazy. You feel like you're rock bottom. You feel like it's never going to get better. You go down one more level. You're thinking about quitting. You're wondering how you're going to make it happen. And then just on the other side of that, you kind of make that decision to stick with it. And just on the other side of that was your breakthrough. How many times have we heard that before? But when you're going through it, it's dark. You mentioned something a couple of times. I want to just ask you. You mentioned your dad not being around. Did you resent him for not being around?
Yeah, for a long time I did. And it's kind of crazy how with that personal development, you release a lot of the stuff down in the basement. And I really do appreciate and love him for everything that he did for me leading up to the point where he did decide that, he wanted to do his own thing. It's kind of crazy that after going into personal development, after going through and having him leave right at the most crucial point of me becoming a man. I've actually had conversations with him in person where I ran into him at another one of my cousin's weddings. And, hey, here's what I'd love for you to do. Go out and do what you got to do. And I'm more than happy to have you back in my life because, hey, you have a granddaughter now, which is even crazier. So no, I don't resent him anymore. I definitely did for a long period of time. But that comes along with the journey and along with the growth is that sometimes you just have to realize, and you get to realize that people are going to choose in and people are going to choose out. So whatever it is that they want to do, I can't control what he did or is going to do. I can only control myself. And a lot of that personal development has definitely taught me that for sure.
Wow, your mom must be a wonderful, strong lady. She did a great job, and just I'm just listening to you speak and just how you've just let it go and you've worked through it. And there's so many people in your situation that are still hanging on to things like that, and it's holding them back. And I think it's such a great story for all of us to hear. Just anything's possible, and you decided to move through it. You decided to forgive. You decided to let that go, and it's that's tough to do. Let me ask you a question. What fuels you now? What motivates you now? Because the Kenny that came in was a younger version, a unmarried, unfatherly version of yourself. You didn't have kids, a child. Obviously, your daughter wasn't born, wasn't even in the picture. What motivates you now compared to what motivated you then?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it kind of ties into what we've already been talking about too, is we talk a lot about our why we go into the entrepreneurship, landscape. And, first and foremost, it was my mom. I didn't have the daughter. Jess and I, we were just dating at that time. Obviously, she was a big reason, as she had been a client of Mike's for a long period of time before, me getting introduced to the business as well too. But for the longest time, it was my mom.
Mm,
Still is my mom for sure, because unfortunately, she's a statistic.
mm,
She's 63 years old. She still works two jobs. And when I looked at this back when, 5.5 years ago, this was kind of the hey, thank you moment, the pay it forward moment, because for a lot of people, they're not retiring the way that they thought that they were, or the way that they thought that they were promised that they could retire. And for my mom, she's one of the hardest working people that I've ever met in my entire life. And a lot of who I am and what I do definitely comes from her.
mm,
And I would make the argument that she would probably just about outwork just about anybody. She's a hardworking individual. She still goes to the gym, a few days a week. She still works two jobs. She still comes over to my place to look after her granddaughter. She
mm.
still goes out and spends time with her friends as well too. And a lot of who I am, Steve, has definitely come from her. My work ethic, my compassion, my drive that I have. But you go through that period of growth and that transition period that is necessary in any entrepreneur space. And my reason why hasn't changed, but it's been added to.
Mm.
Now that I have my wife, Jess, and my daughter, Sadie, waking up and seeing that little girl and seeing my wife kind of go through her own health complications that she's gone through too. They're a huge part of what I do,
Mm.
huge part of why I do it, but also attracting the people that I have to my business. I want to
Mm.
do it for them too. And I really want to just have moral authority with my team,
Mm.
so that if I'm saying, hey, I need you to be here at X time, they already know that I'll be there. And I know that that's definitely something that you've done. And I've admired that about you, is that, you've crossed over some major milestones in your business. And, it's 5, 6 days out of the week, you're at the office before anybody else.
Yeah.
So that's been a huge factor in my business of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
That's huge, man. Moral authority. I just want to make a comment on that. That's so big. I think a lot of people coming up in business, they're always asking questions. They're always wondering, how do I become a great leader? How do I develop my leadership skills? How do I move quicker? How do I get people to follow me faster? And it comes back down to, well, what are you doing? Do you, are you the example? And one of the reasons I show up every day is because one of the ways that I know how to lead and that's helped me become successful is by showing up. And a lot of people, they overlook this. They struggle with showing up on time with a game plan. And I think people struggle with it. Just as we start to wrap, you've been around lots of people that have won. You've been around a lot of people that have lost. What separates a winner from someone that loses in business?
I think it kind of does boil back to that choice, that decision. But a winner has to have some resiliency, some grit. They have to have the ability to know that, just because a lot of people that have come into our business, they've passed me like there was no tomorrow. And, you have to clap for a lot of people, but you also have to clap for yourself. And that's something that I've did a lot for Jess and myself, is that we were a team of two for a long period of time before we developed ourselves to get to that point where we were ready to start leading a bigger team.
Mm.
So tenacity, grit, resiliency, you need to have that headspace about you, that your head on your shoulders, but you have to also realize that you have to give yourself some grace too. You have to allow yourself to go through those struggles and those tribulations, pardon me, to get the triumphs. And that's been something, a huge thing for me. The winning mindset is simply that, is that I had to allow myself to go through those ebbs and flows, as everybody has probably seen for their own lives. But what are you going through those ebbs and flows for? Are you building something for yourself, or are you building it for somebody else? So a mindset for myself has been absolutely crucial, along with just kind of getting your hands dirty every once in a while, getting a little gritty every once and again. So it's been a couple of those different things.
And then of course, people that don't win, they don't have those things, right? They don't get their hands dirty. They aren't gritty. They quit too soon. They, all those things. As we start to wrap, what has you excited now? What are you excited about the future? What are you moving towards? What are you fighting for? What has you fired up?
Yeah. I'm definitely fired up for kind of what we've been able to accomplish in even the last couple months since we've hit our milestone of becoming a junior broker with you in the business. First and foremost, it's the team. I've always been team first. I've always been a competitor in a lot of different team sports. So naturally, I'm looking at my team saying, how can I help them now get to where they want to go? Because we've probably seen it a lot, where a lot of what we do is getting to where we want to go, but then reaching down and pulling people with you so that they can get to where they want to go too. That's one of the things that I'm really excited about. The other things that I'm excited about is definitely for my family. Being on track to retire my mom this time next year. I'm very proud to say that I'm on track to do that, where she gets to choose. Awesome. Yeah, she gets to choose if she wants to go to work, not out of necessity, but let's call it what it is. She gets bored. She gets bored really easily. So she's probably going to want to continue doing stuff. But being able to afford to put Sadie into whatever dance that she wants to go into, whatever sport she wants to be able to go to. I never want to be able to be in a position where if my daughter comes to me and says, Daddy, can we go and do this? I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to say, sweetheart, we can't afford that. As I know a lot of people, unfortunately, in today's world are. So to be able to get my family to a position where now money is not a problem, it's now a resource that I can fall back on and go, hey, what do we want to do today? Where do we want to go? How do we want to live our lives and start living life on our terms, as most people don't have that ability to anymore? So a lot of the family aspect, but also definitely the team aspect of what I want to do for them too. Very excited for that.
That's so awesome. You're a super stud, bro. Appreciate you so much. It's been awesome having you in the business and getting to know you. And it's been great. You can really tell that you've really worked on your mindset. You can really tell that you put in the work, and you talked a bunch about personal growth, but it shows. You're not just talking about reading books and going to a course. You've really taken the stuff that you've learned, and you can tell that it's a part of your DNA. And I think anybody that's on your team or future teammates, I think are blessed to have you as a leader. Straight up, man. I'm proud of you. All right, you guys, I know you got some value out of that. You're probably going to want to go back and watch that again, but I wanted to introduce you guys to Kenny Zanis. I'm excited for you guys to follow his journey. He's on his way to senior broker. He's on his way to taking over the world, changing his life, changing his family's life. He's going to be a generational change for his family. So we're proud of you, man. I can't wait this time next year to watch you retire your spouse and your mom.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate you, bro. Have a good one.